All right, many recent happenings with Ohio State football recruiting. So now is the time to bring in Ben Van Ooyen. He's from the ozone.net. Ben, how you doing tonight?
Great. How are you?
Doing just fine. So we appreciate always the expertise and the insight. Much going on here. So let's cut right to it with Terada Mitchell, linebacker, who has recently committed to Ohio State. Are you a bit surprised by this commitment this early with a number of teams chasing the linebacker?
I am and I'm not. He seemed to want to get his commitment done and over with. He did his research. He got down to between the Buckeyes and Florida State, and he took 2 last-minute trips, first to Ohio State and then lastly to Florida State, and did his homework, liked what the Buckeyes had to say, Bill Davis, Zach Smith, his recruiters. Obviously, the legacies of Ohio State linebackers in the NFL spoke to him. He has a chance to come in next year and have an immediate impact if all 3 of the current linebackers decide to go pro. Worley will definitely, he's a senior, and then Dante Booker and Jerome Baker both could turn pro, so that would leave a vacancy at all 3 spots with a bunch of inexperienced guys behind him. So he has a lot to look forward to. Ohio State fans, I wrote my commitment piece yesterday. I compared him to Raekwon McMillan. He's very, very fluid and can hit the hole and make big hits, and he can also cover sideline to sideline. So once he gets in the Ohio State weight room and nutrition program, he'll certainly fit in with the way Ohio State plays football and defense.
Yeah, Mitchell is out of Bishop Sullivan in Virginia, number 2 rated player in that state. According to most services, 247 has him rated as the number 2 linebacker in the nation. Other services as the top player. And Mitchell, with 32 offers, has chosen the Ohio State Buckeyes. Jackson Carmen, of course, Ben, as you well know, and know so much more than me, has made recent news with his tweet that he would love to receive 100,000 retweets to ensure his place at Ohio State. Talk about the Fairfield, Ohio product, who's the number 1 player in the Buckeye State, who is obviously has some ties to Clemson, and there's some fear that he may travel south.
Yeah, well, I think the Twitter retweets is just kind of to grab some attention and get people to play along and see what he can get in terms of total retweets. I think last time I checked, he was about 3,800. So there's quite a bit ways to go. Although he just did that today. So with Buckeye Nation, you never know. I do think regardless if he gets the 100,000 or not, I do eventually see him signing with Ohio State in the end. He tweeted right after the Mitchell commitment last night, something to the effect of, "This class is bananas or bonkers or crazy." Just the amount of star power that they're getting, and I can tell that he probably wants to be a part of that. I'm not saying Clemson's going to go anywhere. They're going to continue to chase him, as are many other programs across the nation. He did come away very impressed with the Clemson visit that he took a few months ago. I do expect him to be back on campus at Ohio State a couple times, either this summer or during the fall. I don't necessarily expect him to commit anytime soon, but I do expect him, when all is said and done, to become a member of the Buckeye recruiting class of 2018, another 5-star at that.
Hey, Ben, since I'm going to cut this up, I'm going to cut this stupid phone. All right. I'll dive into Tyreke Smith here.
Okay.
Weak side defensive end Tyreke Smith out of Cleveland Heights, a player that, Ben, both of us have interviewed. I had the feeling from talking to some people at Notre Dame that he may be leaning that way. I think it was some wishful thinking at that point a few months ago. 247 Sports likes the Ohio State lean, with Penn State also involved. Your thoughts about Tyreke Smith?
Yeah, when I talked to him I don't remember, it was a couple months ago. He didn't seem to be in any hurry with committing anywhere soon. He certainly wanted to get around and see different programs and see what everybody had to offer. He obviously knows what Ohio State does and has to offer, being from Ohio. Notre Dame, you mentioned, is a school that he is very high on. Michigan, he was up there at a satellite camp this weekend, not at Michigan, but with the Michigan coaching staff, and seemed to come away there with some positive thoughts. He's down in Columbus right now, according to his Twitter. There were some rumors that he might be on commitment watch while he was there. The only reason I can see him wanting to commit now is because of the flurry of defensive line commitments that the Buckeyes have gotten, with Brenton Cox and Teron Vincent and Andrew Chatfield, who we'll talk about here in a few minutes. Doesn't want to risk losing a spot, although he would be perfectly fine at Notre Dame or Penn State, Michigan, any of those programs. But like I said, I have my crystal ball in for him for the Buckeyes. I think he wants to be a part of that legendary class that's coming in. So should be interesting to watch, see what happens in the next, who knows, few days, few months.
Dallas Gant, the linebacker prospect out of Toledo, out of St. John's Jesuit, made his announcement on May 16th. He's choosing Ohio State, 5th-rated outside linebacker, according to 247, top 5 player in the state of Ohio. Your thoughts about the scouting reports you've seen in the video on Dallas Gant?
I like what we're getting at linebacker. Again, he'll have a chance to come in right away and make an impact, assuming the 3 guys ahead of him leave. They have, like I said, a lot of unproven talent at the linebacker position. They brought in Pete Werner and Baron Browning in last year's class, and Browning's recovering from an injury early in camp, and I don't know if Werner will be a first-year player or not, but I think Gant has a chance to come in, make an impact. He picked Ohio State over Notre Dame, and again, I'm really high on him. Obviously, the scouting reports are high on him as the number 5 player in the state of Ohio, and I believe he was the number 3 or number 5 linebacker in the country. So Buckeyes are getting another good one.
Yeah, we're talking a 2018 recruiting class for the Ohio State Buckeyes with Ben Van Ooyen from theozone.net. Please join him there for great analysis on Ohio State's recruiting efforts. That also include a trip down to Florida, as Urban Meyer is apt to do, but in one particular location here with a trio of Andrew Chatfield, defensive end there, Tyson Campbell also there, along with Nesta Silvera. The likelihood that these guys come into the fold, 3 from one school.
Well, at one point last year, we had 3 from Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas with Martell, Tyjon Lindsey, and Haskell Garrett. We all know what happened with Tyjon Lindsey decommitting late, but it's not unheard of for Ohio State to have multiple kids from the same school. Andrew Chatfield, he committed on Friday, which was kind of a surprise, caught a lot of people off guard, even though he was trending that way, with many people picking him after he was a heavy LSU lean. He got the offer from Larry Johnson last week at their spring practice game, and obviously cherished that offer and wanted to take it up and become part of the Buckeye family. So he committed Friday night. Tyson Campbell, the cornerback, he's been high on Ohio State since the outset. I think Ohio State is the crystal ball leader right now, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure when he'll make his decision, but again, looking good for Buckeyes at defensive back. And then Nesta Silvera is a current Miami Hurricanes commitment. He committed back in February. But again, he received his offer this past week when Larry Johnson was down there. And immediately the flipping of the crystal ball picks came in for Ohio State. And I'm myself included, think that eventually he will become a member of Ohio State, maybe sooner rather than later. And he's a big defensive tackle. He'll be the run stuffing defensive tackle, where Teron Vincent will be the kind of pass rushing defensive tackle. And be a good 1-2 punch for a few years for the Buckeyes with all the defensive ends we're getting in.
All right, Ben, I got 2 questions for you. One revolves around defense, and then I want to talk the Ohio angle since we addressed that last time. Ben Van Oyn joining us from theozone.net. Please join him on Twitter at BuckeyeBVO. Ben, we've discussed a number of the recent commits and likely commits for the Ohio State Buckeyes. I see one trend here. It involves a defense. Does that speak to the roster issues coming up with guys moving on to the next level? Or is the class that strong? Or is it just coincidence that the recent run has been very focused on the front 7 on defense?
Well, I think like you said, the last few have been on defense. And I think I don't think it's necessarily roster necessity. We obviously have seen the past few years a lot of defensive players from Ohio State go in the draft, and they'll have them having to reload and bring in. Well, last year was a #1 defensive back class, and this year looks like it's going to be the #1 defensive line class by far. Doesn't look like anybody's going to come even close to that, and even the linebacking class could be the #1 overall by the time it's said and done. On offense, they're going to get their guys. It's just taking a little longer, especially at like wide receiver, offensive line. They've got a couple running backs in the fold and their quarterback. They're waiting on the first wide receiver commitment. They've got a few guys targeted who have released their top lists that have Ohio State included, like Cameron Babb and LaChristian Smith. But offensive line, we've got Max Ray. He's already committed. So I think when all's said and done, it'll be a balanced class, offensive, defense, maybe a little more defense, but we're seeing a lot more guys leave early on the defense than we are on the offense.
Excuse me. Hey, Ben, the last time we discussed Ohio State recruiting, it was probably, I don't know, a month to 6 weeks ago. We discussed the balancing act of Urban Meyer in particular. Obviously, the staff has to execute it, but his thought process in regards to trying to get the best players to win national championships, bottom line, but also trying to continue to establish relationships with Ohio football, and it being a very proud tradition there in the state of Ohio that Ohio produces fine football players, maybe moving down and declining down the list of the very elite. Not maybe what it was 25 years ago, but still among, I would guess, the top 6 to 8 in the country, and just trying to maintain that balance of a relationship with the state of Ohio, and also bringing in the best haul of anybody in the nation. It's good to see for Buckeye fans that out of some of the recent names that have come up, both out of hard commits and also guys that are being discussed. When you look at Jackson Carmen, #1 offensive tackle in the nation, out of Ohio, top prospect in the Buckeye State. Tyreke Smith, still reviewing his options, but he's a top 5 player in the state, as is Dallas Gant, who's a firm commit from a few weeks ago out of Toledo.
Yeah, I think when all is said and done, we'll have maybe 6 or 7 commitments from the state of Ohio. Jackson Carmen, Jalen Gill, Tyreke Smith, LaChristian Smith, Dallas Gant. And then there's a couple of other names that are floating out there. Aeneas Hawkins, he's a defensive tackle, so it really depends on what happens with Silvera. If he decides to stay at Miami, Hawkins might become more of a viable option. There's Christopher Oates as a linebacker out of Cincinnati. He could be a candidate if some of their other linebacker targets decide to go elsewhere. Tavon Thomas was a running back that they were considering, and he put out his top 7 list right before we got on the air here, and Ohio State wasn't included, so it looks like he's eliminated the Buckeyes, which was kind of a surprise. I think if the Buckeyes really wanted him, they would probably have a really good shot. They must have told him or decided to move on from him, running back. But like I've said in the past, Urban Meyer's, he's going national. I mean, he invaded Texas last year. It looks like he's invading Florida hard this year. He's pulling commitments out of Virginia, Pennsylvania. He's hoping to pull Micah Parsons out of Pennsylvania, #1 defensive end in the country. He's gone into Michigan and stolen a few guys out from under them. He's relentless. He scours the country for the best talent. He knows what he wants, and he sends his coaches out, and he's proven year after year that he can pull in the top talent no matter what, from the state of Ohio or the state of Hawaii for all we know. Yeah, it's amazing. It's unlike anything I've ever seen following recruiting for Ohio State in the years I've been following it. Just incredible.
Which is saying a lot. If we would track Jim Tressel's classes from 2001 all the way through his tenure and then the production into the NFL, it would be among the elite of college football. But Urban Meyer has taken it to a new level, no question about that. And it seems like there comes a couple selections, a couple prime selections from the state of Virginia each and every year for Urban Meyer as well. Getting the Ohio State recruiting breakdown as we do from Ben Van Oyn. Catch him on the ozone.net. We lean on Ben to clarify the picture concerning the Buckeyes recruiting pursuits. Ben, we always appreciate the time.
Thanks for having me on, Mark.